Hey everyone, I'm Jake Steinberg, and this is the first episode of my show, a new show. And it's not at all a big deal. This is just another show where we get together and talk about video games. And for my first episode here, I want to talk about Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League. So I want to talk about this game because I think that every year there are one or two titles that sort of become punching bags for gaming discourse, and this is definitely one of them for 2024. And there are so many elements to this game that are easy to pick on, and it's been picked on since it was announced a few years ago. And I think that some of this bullying of the Suicide Squad game is unwarranted. My thesis, if I had to say, is that I think no matter how they talked about this game, no matter what they showed, it has always been perfectly situated to be like that nerd we want to stuff in a locker. It's just that kind of game. Now, Suicide Squad, we have to go over this. It's developed by Rocksteady, who are famous for their critical darling Batman Arkham games, and I do think that the problem with Suicide Squad's reception stems back to Batman. See, the legacy of the Batman Arkham games is that they set the standard for what a serious superhero game should look like. And the big lesson, the thing that everybody walked away with, was that you wanted to feel like Batman. The excellence of that franchise was in a high degree of verisimilitude to the imagined Batman experience. These games were so loved, and this lesson was so internalized that it was no surprise when the next big superhero game came along, it launched, and it was praised for making you feel like Spider-Man. So I think that art teaches you how to consume it. I think you set standards in your own mind about what is or isn't good, or what something should be, because of patterns that you intuitively recognize. Like, have you ever heard a pop song, and even though you didn't know the song, you kind of knew how it was going to go? Like, that used to happen with people when they listened to classical music too, but because that's no longer the thing we are all consuming, those patterns are lost to us. So all of this is to say, this is all to kind of set up my big thesis here. I don't know if the Suicide Squad game is bad, but I think the reason it is being perceived as bad in a roundabout way is Rocksteady's own fault, because of what they taught their consumers to want and expect with Batman, okay? So check this out. Rocksteady is over here, and they said, how do we get to that? How do we be that guy? And I think pretty much every element in the game is there to service this idea, this platonic ideal of being Batman and what people expect of Batman. So you have things like Kevin Conroy's voice, a suite of gadgets, cool melee combat, detective stuff, stealth takedowns. There are so many things you could put here, and it is all to prop up Batman. It all makes you feel like Batman. And this model, this way of designing a superhero game, a superhero experience, is what we are implicitly looking for now in these games, because we liked the Batman Arkham games so much. So now we turn the tables. We look at Suicide Squad. How is it different? So you'd think we go back to this chart, we would slot in the Suicide Squad for Batman and go, okay, what roads do we pave to get there, to get to the Suicide Squad? But that is actually not at all what is happening. Instead, I think Rocksteady uses the Suicide Squad as a starting point and is trying to figure out, okay, how do we go from here to this specific kind of video game that we are imagining, that we want to make? So for the sake of this demonstration, let's focus on Captain Boomerang. I think it's obvious from the jump what's going on here. There's no platonic ideal of a Captain Boomerang video game. That is not something in our collective imagination. And I think this goes for every member of the Suicide Squad. So Rocksteady, they're not going for that. They never were. They never wanted to make the ideal Captain Boomerang game. They want to make a third-person looter shooter with a large emphasis on traversal. And traversal is such a good element to look at here, because Rocksteady says over and over again in their PR that traversal is the main element that makes each member of the Suicide Squad different. Traversal. That's the thing, how each character moves that gives them an identity in your actual gameplay systems. So what do you imagine for Captain Boomerang's traversal? How is Captain Boomerang gonna move? What do you see in your mind's eye? What Rocksteady went with is a Speed Force gauntlet that effectively lets the character teleport around the map. Deadshot and Harley Quinn both, like Boomerang, they have this thing set up where all the characters steal technology, and that technology dictates the basis of their traversal mechanic. We didn't ask ourselves, how do we achieve the ideal Captain Boomerang traversal? We asked ourselves, what do we do to this guy to make him fun in this game that we want to make? And you don't have to take my word for it. Here's Suicide Squad game director Axel Ridby talking about their process in a Discord Q&A. When we start designing a Suicide Squad member, we start with what we think is going to be fun ways to get around Metropolis. And how could that traversal also be used as a tool in combat encounters? How do we want this character to be played? What makes this character different from other characters, both in terms of playstyle and in terms of strengths and weaknesses? What would suit that character's personality? So let's take it back to our little chart. We start with a character. We give them fun traversal. Maybe we throw in some unique perks, a specific weapon loadout to make them work to get to this game. And the important thing here is, I don't even think this is bad. I don't have a problem with this, but it's not what Rocksteady trained their consumers to want. If people look at this game and feel like it's a third-person looter shooter with a DC Comics skin, yeah, it kind of is. But what makes things tougher for Rocksteady, I think, is that they're also kind of transitioning from the kind of game that traditional video games press loves to a genre that has not been as appreciated, I think, by those outlets, like the Batman Arkham games. These are third-person, narrative, action games with a strong focus on perspective, right? You know, inhabiting a character on a mostly linear path. This is the same as most of the prestige titles in the gaming space. And again, you can see here, art teaching you how to consume it. When a game is serious, when it wants to signal that to its consumers, it looks like these games. Now, Suicide Squad, especially at first blush, looks more like Destiny or Marvel's Avengers or Warframe, games that are designed to keep going and evolving past the day you buy them. And in answering the big question, the question that I assume is the title of this video, you're trading that single-player premium experience for what everyone assumes is pretty much the exact opposite, a multiplayer live service game. And I say that because live service, like, ooh boy, I don't think there is a more poisoned term in the video game space. Like, the truth is, I think most modern video games really have like elements that you could describe as live service, but audiences have been trained to recognize that term specifically as code for, I think, money hungry. Like, it's a game driven by monetization over time, right? You want to keep giving more money to it beyond just paying for it the first time. Now, if we dig into Suicide Squad specifically, I think they are actually making a lot of relatively consumer-friendly decisions when compared to other games in the live service space. But then the fear, I think after you get past the money part, is the content being designed in a way that it's just grindy or repetitive, and all of these fears that nobody ever would have charged at the Batman Arkham franchise. Even if those games, maybe they were repetitive, but they weren't going to be perceived as such because of the positioning and the messaging. And since the reveal of Suicide Squad a few years ago, that initial positioning, that initial messaging around the game, the PR department has not done enough to change the public narrative. And I think that's largely because it was impossible. Rocksteady has been fighting themselves this entire time. And the last time a Batman Arkham game came out was in 2015. So not only do they set themselves up, training consumers with, this is what you can expect from big budget superhero games. Not only do they successfully impart that idea onto their consumers, they also have made everybody wait 9 years for this game, from these games that everybody loved. Like, really think about how long 9 years is and how you build that up. Take yourself back to 2015, really, like totally hypothetically speaking here. That would be enough time for somebody to, I don't know, like finish their last couple years of college and graduate and then work their first full-time job for a few years. Maybe they got sick of that and then they move to New York City. They go to graduate school. They meet the love of their life. They get a job making way too many YouTube videos. Then they move to Philadelphia. They get a puppy. They get engaged. They start saying, riddle me this a lot. And then they launch a Patreon for a YouTube show and talk about Suicide Squad in the first episode. Hypothetically, that could have been what you spent the last 9 years doing. In theory. Oh, God. Anyways, I think the worst part about all of this is like, I think Suicide Squad, I think the game actually looks fun. I like these kinds of loot games. I like expressive traversal. I hope that I'll have a reason to keep returning to a DC Comics based world. I love DC Comics. I love the DC universe. And I'll find out soon because I should be posting this video the day that the game comes out. And hey, that's it. We've done it. You've made it to the end of the episode. This is my new series. I will be back from here on out on Thursdays. And I hope you will be back, and I hope you will catch my drift. Thank you for watching. All right, Chip, so tell me the truth. What do you think? Are you excited to play the Suicide Squad game?
Yeah, I can't wait to feel like King Shark.
But wait, no, Chip, the whole point of the video was that that's not how it works. You don't feel like...
He's a shark, ain't he?
Well, yeah.
What do you know about what a shark does?
More than you, Chip. You're just a smooth-brained little puppy.
Does that make you feel good? Calling me out like that in front of your 9 audience members? I'm just a baby. I am 2 years old.
No, sorry.
Do comments like that make you feel like the Joker? Because that's what you are. The Joker. Dada. Dada?